Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and we are back from holiday. Yes, it's been two-ish weeks, maybe a little bit more, but I thought we would jump right into it. Don't worry about me and what I've been going through. It's about you guys, and I tend to like to start things very generalized. So yeah, maybe this day of series is I'm pulling skirting the edge of what the day of series really means, but I think we would have some fun with it. And I really appreciate Dead Man, of course, coming in with the definitions and basic definitions, the literary definitions that we're going to use today. I thought we could put all three of a number of these together, and three of them is pretty good. Um, Chekhov's gun, Chandler's law, Hemingway's iceberg. And how we can use them for our tabletop role-playing experiences. So first of all, we this is a tabletop role-playing game channel, so that's essentially what we're going to be talking about. But of course, I always talk about movie tropes, television tropes, and things like that. And essentially, tabletop role-playing games are improv, first draft scripts that we have fun with. So many people that are new into role playing games can get very feel like they have to make the perfect story or something, and that's not really it. I mean, basically, when you get to the table with a bunch of people or you're online and everything, it's all first drafting, right? It's just us spitballing things and having fun with it. So it's almost impossible to create a perfectly um, a perfectly chaptered rising beat, fully developed NPCs with perfect uh, um, dialogue. It's nearly impossible. It's like a first drafters, and of course, um, we love to feel sometimes we're a little bit too smart for our own good, and we want to see perfection, but don't let perfect get in the way of having fun and being good. So okay, so of course, we have to define what we're talking about. So, of course, we want to let me allow me to pull up my document here. We get some um, examples from the individuals who were quoted as saying specific things about the nature um, of literary descriptions, and then, of course, we're going to take that, rip it apart, and turn it into our own. Oh, let's expand the size of this here first. This here thing. Yep. Chandler's law, etc., etc., etc. Of course, we want to share this out. You ignorant piece of. All right. And as Dead Man of here threw this into the chat as well. Good morning, everyone. Hey there, Drew and Dead Man and the N King. Hello. I'm a little bit behind on the chat here. Kind of scrolled a little or populated a little slowly here. Yeah, sometimes the Chekhov's gun isn't a person. An example it evokes is a gun on the mantelpiece. If you introduced it in your story, then it should be used at some point. Yep. Uh, let's throw this in here. So Chandler's law. Let's go over overview of all three, and then we'll come back to the very first one. So Chandler's law is, when in doubt, have a man come through a door with a gun in his hand, and essentially it incorporates an immediate action. Plus, you have the question of like who, what, where, how, and why is this happening. Chandler's law is essentially um, sometimes a writer or playwright or whatever writes a character or situation into a corner. In other words, something happens and there's the resolution of the event happens too quickly, and there's nothing left for the characters to do. Now, often this, when in doubt, have a man come through a door with a gun in his hand, was more for the for movies and television, but it does incorporate into many storylines in terms of great. We have our main characters, and they've discovered, I don't know, the killer, or they found the clue that will solve the mystery, or they have the code, or the ancient text or something, and all they have to do is get from A to B, or present it in front of a council or whatever, and they've already solved it. And we see this many times in all of our action movies where, someone comes through a door, and it doesn't have to be a gun. It's basically something immediately happens with action, and then it presents to us a number of questions. Plus, we got a lot of action and things thrown in our faces. And for role-playing games, we can actually put this in our back pocket. It's like, well, why did the trolls break through the roof of the inn to attack the PCs? Or why is there an angry mob outside ready to set fire to the inn? The PCs have already, they're in the cavern, they're walking down the road. They are, the player characters very quickly realized, oh, no, we know that the princess was taken over by a doppelganger. We figured that out early. This adventure is done, right? They did it in the first 5 minutes, and you're like, oh no, what do I do now? And mind you, it can feel, if it's not connected to other things, just having someone or something bust in and create a lot of action and chaos will seem disconnected. But in the interim of all the chaos and the action, we and the players, by them speaking and establishing lines and threads of knowledge as to why it's happening, then not only you, but through the mind, the hive mind, you steal from them and go, oh, there is a good reason why the trolls broke in, because I wanted to have trolls break in and I have no idea why they're connected to the main plot. You listen to your player characters, and if they are paranoid, they will make connections in their own minds, and then you answer who sent them? Who are they that broke in? What do they want? What techniques are they using? Where did they come from? How did they find out where we're at? Why are they attacking us in the first place? And so that's Chandler's Law. Chandler's Law is basically, when in doubt, have a man come through a door with a gun in his hand. Let's see what you guys have to say. The next one is Chekhov's gun. I'm going to put Dead Man's thing up here. Yep. And in Chekhov's gun, this is more of how we can use this for role-playing games. This is more of a someone picks up on a thread or a piece of information or something in the background, an unnamed NPC, a line of dialogue that's cast off, and you take that and then you run with it. So Chekhov's gun is described as, if you say in your first chapter that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging there. And I describe this as innocuous or insignificant becomes important. So in other words, the point of Chekhov's gun in terms of literary writing and script writing and being a playwright and such is basically saying, don't put things in your story unless you're going to use them. Now, it doesn't have to be a gun, but that's how the quote came about. It means if there's an object that's given some importance, or the eye is drawn to it, your attention is drawn to it, then it should be used later on. Now, in role-playing games, we can't often best laid plans and all that, right? So we could leave 5 very important things hanging around and players will completely ignore it. And then 15 other things that you just randomly spouted out your mouth in the scene ends up being this thing that the player character starts scraping at. In other words, if it doesn't matter if it's unimportant, if it draws the players in, it's part of the hook, then it is important. Make it important. Now, the importance doesn't mean it's a magic item or an artifact or something. It could be something as simple as describing the blue scarves that the locals are wearing on this particular day of the Blue Jay or something. And the PCs are like, ooh, this must attach to the Aarakocra we encountered 3 sessions ago. And you're like, I didn't even think about them, but whatever. Okay, yeah, sure. You know what? Yes, it is correct, right? In your own head, And so basically it means having something in your world, whether it's like a turn of phrase or clothing or a monolith or uh, a key, an important speech. It could be the faces on the local coinage that's used. It doesn't matter what it is, but if it draws the players in, then it should have some importance. Again, our role playing experiences are basically first drafters. And so you don't know what's important until it becomes important by the other people at the table. And so, yeah, making us important, I mean, as a game masters, as the narrators, the storytellers, a lot of times the hive mind is far more intelligent. And so if it draws someone in, then make that the important thing. And again, it doesn't need to be a gun, but what it essentially means is it has some importance to the story. And so the funny thing is we've seen many stories that bring up importance and then it's dropped and our mind unconsciously goes, why didn't they go back to that event? Or why didn't they go back to that specificity? We've seen many television shows where a character off to the side coughs and or a young lady goes, oh, I smell something, I'm feeling a little sick, and runs off. And immediately, it's a tropish thing, right? We immediately go, someone's coughing, that character's sick, that's going to be important. Oh, that character gets, and it's usually illness, death, or that character's pregnant, and so on. I mean, a very tropish thing to do, but it works, right? It very much works. Last one is Hemmingway's iceberg theory, and as part of this, that's a negativity, but we're gonna fill that with our own tabletop role playing experiences. So the Hemmingway iceberg theory is, and as Dead Man has mentioned, is a framework. Says if, and I modified this quote, but anyway, it says if one knows enough of what they are writing about, omit things. The reader will have a feeling of those things as strongly as though the writer had stated them. An iceberg is only 1/8 of it being above water. A writer who omits things because he does not know them only makes hollow places in his writing. And I summarized this below about basically for NPCs, but it does operate for your setting in terms of wants, needs, came from, and headed towards. In other words, the omission of information makes a vacuum in the story that our own consciousness will fill in those gaps. So sometimes one of the main things in tabletop role playing is how do we lore dump on our player characters? And nobody wants to sit back to hear a 35-minute dissertation about your setting. No one's going to sit there and listen to it. Nobody wants to know that. So what you have to do is omit things that the players will fill in. So if the local people are wearing blue scarves and running towards the main thoroughfare, don't have an NPC stop and completely explain what's going on. The players will fill in the gap based on the actions of what people are doing. And so when making an NPC on the fly, one of the I call them, there's actually 5, but there's like 4 things that you can come up with is what does the NPC want? What do they need? Where have they come from and where are they headed towards? And a want, of course, is very conscious. They want to be left alone. They want to make a great deal. They want to befriend the player characters. They want to let the constabulary, the guardians of this city state know that there are interlopers. They have wants. They want to keep their family safe. They want to get a higher status in society. Now, their needs may not be conscious, but they may need something. So somebody may want power, but what they really need is safety. What they want is to be famous or recognized for their brilliance, but what they need is to shut the hell up, right? Where have they come from? What was their life like before they got here, right? Were they struggling with something before the player characters came along, and they came from a background that was that was pretty mundane. They were unrecognized. Where are they headed towards? Are they headed towards their own downfall? Are they headed towards? Are they just busy? Are they headed towards their family member who was just arrested or is hungover in the tavern or has fallen down a well, or something like that. And then when the player characters intersect the NPC, then you can start filling out little gaps, but leaving things with omission, leaving hollow places, as Hemmingway's iceberg theory has stated. Leave a hollow place, and the player characters will fill that stuff in. And then, of course, again, we steal from our our hive mind. All right, sorry. Let's get into what our co-hosts have to say. Yeah, Drew says at least 2 things explicitly named in the title are already in my own system I'm working on. Perfect. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes, you know what? A lot of us have already heard about these concepts already. Maybe they weren't named, or I thought we would just bring some of these together and go, oh, that's where that came from. We hear about things like Chekhov's gun, Murphy's Law, things like that. And I thought we would bring up some of these as well. And the Yanking says sometimes Chekhov's gun isn't a person. Of course. The example it evokes is a gun on a mantelpiece. Yep. If you introduce that in your story, then it should be used at some point. Now, my contention for it being used versus the Chekhov's gun, like actually firing the gun, because the gun is there. My point is, it doesn't necessarily need to be a weapon, and it doesn't necessarily need to go off. But if it's a medallion, if it's a special tattoo, if it is a turn of phrase like the Queen's hand, and the PCs attach themselves to this phrase that people say in this small town known as the Queen's hand, then make that important. And so it essentially is, if you're going to introduce it and it becomes something that other people assign importance to, then just make that thing important. Maybe you didn't intend for the Queen's hand, for the Queen to have a missing hand, and she has like multiple hands she attaches to her arm that have different capabilities or something. Maybe you hadn't thought about that, but then you go, I just made up this phrase, the Queen's hand, but maybe she really does have a artificial hand that she uses to overlord over the people or something. Yeah, and Dead Man makes a good point. Chekhov's gun and Chandler's Law are tropes, and we see these tropes 1,000 times, right? Hemingway's Iceberg is a structural framework, and the structural framework is you can design by making by omitting information into a story. For example, we've seen stories where someone has a gun and is feeling, and it's written into a story that they're depressed. The camera pans away. We see our main characters walking away, and we hear the gunfire, which means our brains instantly attach, a suicidal event to what has happened in the story, in the literature. And the same thing can happen in your own stories, where the player characters come upon a place and it's a collapse. The player characters look at the NPCs and say, what happened here? And everyone bows their head and goes, a great tragedy. Well, what does that mean? What did somebody cause the accident? Well, it doesn't matter, right? It was a great tragedy. PCs will start to fill in the gaps and go, oh, I bet it was a great evil that did this. And you go, I don't know why it happened, but sure, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Drew says Shaun of the Dead plays with Chekhov's gun. Yep. With the pup they're going to is called the pub they're going to is called the Winchester, after the rifle which comes into play. Yep, sure is. Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone. Well, Happy New Year to you. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Hey guys. Mm-mm-mm. Chekhov's podcast. It's funny. Mike says TTRPGs are filled with Chekhov's plot hooks or Chekhov's encounters. Hell yeah. Hell yes. Yep. Never place anything on the table that you as DM do not want to see used or broken. I think, you know what? That's I've always wanted to do a like taboos of the tabletop role-playing experience, right? Like there are things that we accept, but we never really name them. And one of those things is like your tabletop role-playing game, if you're gonna bother introducing it to the players, expect them to play with that toy and to break it and abuse it, right? Anything we introduce is going to be used and abused. And I we see people complain that their big bad evil guy got trounced by the players, but role-playing games are designed essentially for the players to beat the hell out of the bad guys. That's what they're designed for. They're not designed for the game master to win. Now, we can win, but encounters are designed for the player characters to use and abuse. And I think maybe we don't really talk about that. Like, yeah, you're a set designer, and oh, by the way, we're going to set it on fire and throw bricks at it and use air cannons on it, right? Sure, you might be the greatest set designer in the world, but we're going to destroy that, the intricacies you made. So if you're making Death Stars and you're gluing bits and pieces and spray painting it and all that kind of stuff, and you're like, this is perfect. Yeah, we're going to set up little squibs and destroy that damn thing. So, yeah. Mike also goes on to say, Hemingway Iceberg is also show don't tell. Let the PCs fill the empty spaces with their imagination. Their minds will do more world building in that moment than a 15-minute narrative. And I think we've lost or haven't described the reason why that Hemingway's Iceberg works. And we've seen videos of the iceberg theories as well, right? And there's many iceberg theory videos makers out there. And when it comes to info dumping on player characters, sure, we may think we hold dear our world building, right? We suffer from world builders disease, and we want to incorporate. We've made 17 different languages, and we have all these different cultures and what they wear and the kind of weapons they use and the mounts they ride on. And of course, we have it to the north and the south and the east and the west. Blah, blah. The players probably are not going to be interested in that. So the best way to info dump is don't explain it. Just introduce people and what they're wearing and what they're seeing and what they say. And then when the players go, oh, I bet those weapons are used to chop at the legs of mounts from the people from the north. And you're just like, I don't. Yes. The answer now is yes. Don't fight it. Seeing that a game master has to study and be aware of so many storytelling techniques, you start to see why the failed novelist exists the way it does. Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, the tabletop community is like it's like the sinkhole of other creative endeavors. Uh People that are painters, artists, digital creators, comedians, playwrights, novelists. Like, we all fall into tabletop role-playing games. Hell, the creators of The Expanse did that damn thing, and created their own Expanse world that's now going to possibly have like an animated part to it. And it got on, and it went to Amazon Prime and has its own television series and everything. And that started, but they went into role-playing games as well. So Chekhov's donkey. Yeah. Oh, so funny. Yeah, where do they come from? Maybe from the land down under. Mike says the problem with any Chekhov's gun is that it flies in the face of red herrings. One has to decide which path is correct. Now, I used to hold on to red herrings as like a great way to distract players, but as I've gotten older, I've really thrown red herrings out the door as a tool. So, okay, so when Mike mentions that the problem with Chekhov's gun is that it flies in the face of the red herring, is the sense that, let's say the blue scarf, you had no intention of the blue scarf having anything to do in your game, but the players bring up the blue scarf. Maybe one of them takes a blue scarf and starts wearing it. They go to the next town. They ensure that they wear the blue scarf to make the guards of the next city state recognize that they belong there. And you start you have to make a choice. Was this just a random comment and it has no bearing on the story, or whether the Chekhov's gun of it is because it is there, it must be important. And I fall in favor of when a player, okay, it sounds backwards to make something innocuous important, but what your players are doing is they want to be rewarded for engaging in your world. And if your players are in your sandbox and they're playing with your toys, I feel like the toys should be something that's worth playing with. So I personally, and I don't think it's wrong for anybody to do this, I personally wouldn't make the blue scarves a red herring. If the players say it's important, then I'm like, yeah, then it is important in some fashion, whether it's a social construct, wearing the blue scarf is important to wear, to be recognized as a person from a particular place or religion or something. But I wouldn't just say, oh, well, it means nothing. You're just playing with a blue scarf and it has no effect. I would rather reward the players. That's just me. Thomas Anderson talks about lichens. The lichens turn out to be an elder god. You go a little too far with that. Also, the deer is such out of control eating those trees. I think you've taken that a little bit too far. I think you take an Iceberg thing a little too far. Yeah, yep. Yeah, I guess that is my law there, True. DBJ's law. When in doubt, go with the players. I mean, why not? Listen, I'm not the smartest person or the most brilliant individual in the world, and especially at this time of day. This early in the morning, I tend to be a little bit foggy headed. Especially with even starting the show. I'm like, I gotta about to start the show now, and then I realize my audio's not done right or something's reset or whatever. And so I'm like, listen, if I can offset the brain power so I don't have to burn brain cells, I'd rather default to the players. And it's not that the players should always win. That's not. I think it's we should make a difference between players always being right and winning. Always rewarding players versus the players always winning. Okay. So in the concept of the blue scarf and you accepting the players come up with some out of this world reasoning for why they're wearing it and you just say yes, that doesn't mean they've won the game. A lot of times this has nothing to do with die rolls or your enemies or anything, but unless you're running a specific mystery style game and you want to extend that mystery, if the players infer something about the trolls that broke in with a gun in the last scene, just shrug your shoulders and go, yeah, that's sure, it's correct. Later on, you write down that in the notes and it becomes real, right? This is first drafting. And I think sometimes we are far too much attached to our own creativity versus the hive mind. And we know in Hollywood that they have writers' rooms. A great writer will make a great writing room. And the idea is to take a big board and they throw a bunch of things at it. And maybe your great idea isn't appropriate for this game. Maybe it's appropriate for something later. And you just hold that off to the side and you just go with what the players have to say. And maybe it becomes yeah, I'm always foggy headed. Yeah. Lichens are the lichens are the red herring of the stream. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I like lichens. I don't know. King says also DMs don't have to introduce red herrings. The players will create them throughout the campaign. They will. Especially a lot of times when the players make a left turn and you intended for them to go down into the deep pits underneath the city, right? You had this great story about you made maps to go down into the underrealm of the city. It's like a sewer, but even below the sewer, there's like raw caverns and things. And the players, I don't know, you describe the colorful birds that are circling overhead of this city state, and the PCs keep looking up and they're like, but the birds are important. There must be something with the birds, the birds, the birds. And you're just rolling your eyes like, please don't follow the birds. I said that all, I pulled that out of my ass, literally. And now they're worried about these birds. And so it doesn't mean that you need to crumple up and throw away your under city caverns. It just means there's a new story involved about these birds, right? One doesn't necessarily destroy the other one, right? And so, yeah, it just means that maybe you'll use the story at a different date. Maybe it means you literally have to say, all right, guys, hold on. I thought you were going to go into the Undercity. I didn't plan on you guys running across rooftops looking at birds. Give me just a minute. And then, then here comes an improv session where 5 sessions ago, you had this adventure. You start to recontextualize things, make it a rooftop running adventure with these birds, and now you have something later on. Yep. Yeah, players are like the co-hosts here, people the GM works together with to create a memorable story. Absolutely. That's what you guys do for me, right? He's like, Mike says, riffing on the blue scarf concept, the Chekhov's gun is that it does mean something. The red herring is that it means something other than what the players think. Perhaps it's not religiously significant. Perhaps it's an indication of relationship status. Only married couples wear them, etc. Exactly. So you may have intended it to mean something, but you omitted what that meaning was. The players made a different meaning, and you just go with what the players meant, right? So this isn't a zero-sum creative endeavor. It just means you start throwing the wet toilet paper at the wall, right? And whatever sticks, that's where it is. The player characters throw their own, and you just go with what that means. And that's all it is. And I think sometimes we world builders, in our diseased minds, think that if the players don't understand what we're saying, that we are wrong and that the players are wrong. And I think we should just flip it over and go, no, what is created for all of us is actually the correct thing, not the terrible thing. Yeah. TA says, the interesting thing I had with things that were red herrings for something they were on about at the time is that the herring to that motive or thing they are trying to solve is important to something completely different in the same world and could cause skipping from one adventure directly to another. Listen, we do that often, right? My adventure is to go down into the Undercity. I'll have the old hag run around the corner and go down into the sewer system. I'll have little kids drop things down there like a key or a ball down there. I'm coming up with all these story hooks to get the players to go down into the Undercity. And sometimes the players will follow the clue, but not the way I thought they would follow the clue. For example, the players may say, uh-oh, there's something down in the Undercity. We must evacuate the whole upper part of the city because there's something dangerous brewing down there. And they haven't even taken a step down there. They need to go to the nobles or the rich merchants and get them to leave the city. They need to go to the underworld and hire someone to go down there for them or whatever. And all those things could happen. And sometimes we leave too many hooks, and maybe the players get a little bit too paranoid or they come at it from a different angle. But, the point is for us to embrace that and go, yeah, okay, so what? Let's see. The Yanking said, recently, Monolith put out the Batman RPG they've been working on. It makes me wonder if someone is playing literal Batman, you really have to pay attention to what that player fixates on. There was back in the day, there was an old Mayfair version of the DC AP system. I don't know what you call it. It used a 2D10 system, and they had a whole book that was basically based on it was based on Gotham City, and you played Batman Incorporated, Batman and the whole Batman family, and in various adventures and stuff, and all the rules were kind of like hyper focused on that. And it does bring up a point, like if the players fixate on something, how do we make it important in the story? And my point is, we don't. We allow the players to make it important, and then we just vibe off of that. Sorry if I sound a little bit under the weather, because I do feel that way. Yep. Yeah, the Ink King says, one girl has been wearing red boots at every location we've been to. The DM then has to decide how true that is. Now, sometimes the importance of a thing is designed to just lead the hooks in. So if anyone has ever seen the movie The Sixth Sense, M. Night Shyamalan has the color red in the background or worn by someone to establish the importance of that individual or that location or that story element. So in sometimes the blue scarfing, the red herring that we were talking about, how this blue scarf has no meaning and you didn't design it to have any meaning, but the player characters establish it. It's a possibility that its importance is only about an important NPC. Whenever the PC sees someone else wearing blue or a blue scarf, whatever, that could give them a clue that that's an important NPC. Or the color blue is leading towards an encounter with a big bad evil, and all the henchmen are wearing blue. And it could be that, this color or this garment or whatever, it doesn't have, maybe, no one gives it any religious significance, no one gives it any political significance. It could literally be it could literally have a literary significance. It is a meta clue leading the players to another thing. So yeah, it's possible for that, right? It would be like I remember playing in a game where this wasn't me, but one of the people that was running the game kept attaching dragons to everything until when we get towards the end of the game, we should have known that there would be a dragon at the end. So when we went to an inn, it was called the Dragon Something Inn. There were guards, and the guards wore like dragons on their lapels or something. And then we were going through. We left the city, and the people in the outwards of the city were saying that there were there were bandits hiding in the woods, as greedy as dragons or something. And eventually we actually confronted a dragon, but all the clues leading to it was more evidence of like it was more meta than it was people actually being afraid of dragons. There was actually no evidence of dragons around at all, because the dragon was trying to be sneaky, but it was like subtly the people were picking up on it, maybe, kind of. And in hindsight, we made reasons for it, but in the beginning, it really wasn't that. It was just a game master going like, "Hello, everybody! I'm trying to tell you, there's a dragon in this story." And stuff. Anyway, Gasper Tustol says, "Personally, I've always been a fan of leaving there to be miscellaneous objects that seem so stupid to have, but later on become so valuable in the process." An example was when I had given them a random bucket when their looted chest had nothing else in it, but sometime during another quest, they were faced with a scale that had only one pot hanging from it. And with the intelligence wisdom check, turned out that the bucket they had was the exact height and weight they needed. Now, of course, the entire comment is going to come up. But in ye olden days of the OSR, if I could be kind of stupid with that, that was a real thing, right? There was a reason why players would, I don't know, grab random objects in dungeons and carry them around with them, because in our heads, we always imagined that, I don't know, a goblin chew toy, I don't know, a weird chicken that had like multicolored feathers or something. Like, there was just random things thrown into these OSR dungeons, what we called modules back then. And sometimes they were the key to open up something else. And when I say open up, I don't mean a literal door, although there were keys that open doors. What I meant is, like, there might be, I don't know, a wyvern femur that was being used as a club, and we'd go, why a wyvern femur? Like, why is the ogre hitting us with a wyvern femur? That must be important. And so we carry around this giant femur that's used as a club because we thought it meant it would unlock some mystery later on. The idea of the PCs carrying around a bucket that didn't mean anything, and then later on finding out that that bucket or that pot is the exact size and shape of this other thing later on. And sometimes when players attach themselves to things like that, don't look at them like they're silly. Maybe make that important. I've played with plenty of players that are always like collecting like the claws and teeth and scales of like the enemies they've taken down, or collecting errant skulls, debris, effluvia from their enemies or whatever. And later on, I would have NPCs go like sniff the air or look at them and go, are those the scales of a, I don't know, what's something else other than a wyvern? I can't think of anything. I don't know, salamander scales or something like that. And then they would trade some. Hold on, I have something very important. And of course, they'd always pull something out that's silk, wrapped in silk, and they untie it and they unlock the thing, and there's silver filigree, and they're given something else. So rewarding the players for picking up nonsensical items also is a great way to bring the player characters in. As a matter of fact, something 5th edition has completely dropped that they introduced early on in 2014 was the idea of a D100 table of trinkets. Now, they've completely dropped trinkets as a thing, but the point of trinkets was, here's this object players are carrying around with them that on a random table have no meaning, but we will attribute meaning to it. So it's not a red herring. It is, hey, it's the Chekhov's gun. It must mean something. It is the, hey, going back to Chandler's law, it's random enemy comes in with spells and crossbow bolts, shooting everywhere, and they steal the trinket. Why? I don't know, but the player characters might establish some kind of importance to that. So yeah. Gaster Tuso goes on to say, another thing I like using colors to represent various elements in the world. Yep. Like you mentioned, with the blue being a person or figure of importance, or what I've always enjoyed, green for chaotic or perhaps dangerous magic. By the way, green is such a slept-on color for other things. It's always used for life-based magic, where really the color green could represent many other things. I think colors represent many things. Elements, earth, air, fire, water, can represent many things. Things that are important. Gemstones have an importance. But talking about color, we often associate purple with royalty. And so finding an NPC with purple eyes could be a clue. And listen, you don't have to give any context to this, but if an NPC, let's say living in Flea Bottom, right? They live in the bottoms, but this NPC happens to have purple eyes. A player could infer purple eyes, royalty. Are they born to nobility? Do they have the blood of the noble family running in their blood? Maybe that's true, or maybe they just happen to have purple eyes. And again, we could drop that hint, and the players, it goes right over their head. But again, you might still want to drop the hint, even if it goes over their head, because they don't realize it today. But in the 3rd session, the 5th session, the 23rd session, they go, oh, that's why that person had purple eyes. And like, yeah, that's why. Gaster says, another thing I love doing that is so slept on, meeting the villain before you know they're the villain. Yep. Difficult to pull off, but yeah. Yeah, picture this. You're walking through the woods. There's no one around, and you're cold and lost. You have nothing to feed you, nor any water to quench your building thirst. And behold, You discover a kind old man who offers you not just shelter and respite, but even food and drink. You know, uh, the television show What If, the Marvel is on Disney Plus here in the States. What If has brought up the idea that Odin is the bad guy. And Screen Rant, I think it's either Screen Rant and or CBR websites have detailed the fact that Odin, long before Thanos, Odin may have been the big bad, theoretically going after the cosmic gemstones and wanted to dominate the 9 realms and beyond to get those gemstones, and that Odin was the bad guy. And when I like the idea of like the kindly old man, the gentle old woman, the innocent young child that grows to become the bad guy, or the PCs are introduced to someone who was previously the bad guy and they didn't know it, or whatever, or the bad guy just happens to have a hankering for like I like you guys, you PCs, I like you guys, but but you find out they're doing like all these evil things on the side and whatnot. I like that. I like that a lot. Plus, that's the yin yang of evil, right? A really good bad guy has has a sprinkling of goodness in him, and some really really cool good guys always have a sprinkling like a really bad vice or bad attitude or like a negative trait and stuff. And I love that. Yeah, he's kind and sweet and even generous with how he nurses you back to health, only to reunite him. Oops, later on and discover he was really the lich you need to kill. I love those ideas. I love that a lot. Drew says, yeah, that Hela episode in season 2 of What If was really good. Sure, the Kahori episode is the best, but the Hela episode was for me not too much behind. I agree with that. And I mean, the What If story does it. I mean, I like the stories because it fills in that gap. Like Hela was like, listen, you raised me and trained me to be the goddess of death. Like, I didn't choose this. You trained me this way. So why wouldn't I want to be the best at it? Right. And so it is kind of funny. And there's a little sarcasm, and there's like Hela's got like the little one-liner jokes that come into it. But yeah, it did make Odin the bad guy. And to Odin's credit, Odin himself realizes he was the bad guy and kind of trying to make up for it, right? I mean, let's see. Turned his daughter into the goddess of hell, let his son grow up to be an arrogant a-hole and then had to correct him, stole a child and destroyed the giants through his onslaught trying to take over the 9 realms, right? There's a bunch of stuff that Odin did, Marvel Cinematic Universe wise, and I would guess in Norse mythology that is like, yeah, these people weren't the nicest people, including Odin and Thor, the rest of them. The Engine says, an idea: have an evil warlord who is in fact a failed novelist, perhaps a bard. Yeah. That way, their evil plots have actual Chekhov's guns and red herrings, like the Riddler. He can't help himself. I like that. Self-promotion. We did a book on liches, and one of the liches was a bardic lich. I love the idea of a literal novelist like bad guy who's who's basically trying to live out his own story in his own words and lifestyle, stuff like that. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Mike says, consider Doom. Oh, I hope you mean Victor Von Doom. He's fought the Fantastic Four for decades, but was the one to save both Sue and her unborn child, whom Doom named Valeria after his mother. Villains can have codes, conduct or rules. Yep, they absolutely can. They can be hospitable, well-mannered, honorable, but ruthless, vicious, jealous, and greedy, etc. And if I could turn this back to Chandler's Law, because Chandler's Law is one of the ones that we really don't often talk about, in tabletop role playing games, but but Chandler's Law, you know, Chandler's Law is this one, right? It's when in doubt, have a man come through the door with a gun in his hand. Mind you, that doesn't necessarily need to be against the PCs. What if this could be a move, a Deus Ex Machina move by a bad guy to get the PCs out of a rut. So the PCs have no clues. They don't know what to do next. They don't know where to go. They're in the inn. Suddenly, enemies or some outer element burst through the walls of the inn, cause all kinds of chaos. PCs run for it, and they're like, what the hell just happened? Maybe the PCs are about to get a TPK. The trolls break in and they save the player characters, and they may have been saved by the big bad guy. And maybe the big bad guy thinks that the player characters deserve this. This is their way of recruitment, right? Like, you deserve to be on my side. I'm not going to let anything happen to you, or whatever the case might be. The lich sends whites and wraiths to save the player characters, and that just irks the dragon and the dragon lord and the dragon lord's enemies to double down to go against the player characters who just got their rear end saved. And the PC is like, we didn't need your help. And the bad guy is like, the lich lord is like, oh, I've sent my emissaries to help you out. They're like, damn it, we weren't on your side. And going back to Chandler's Law, hey, sometimes we back our own selves into a corner with our storyline, and we're like, I don't even have a good idea. Sometimes a good idea, Chandler's Law doesn't necessarily mean someone random jumps into a room and starts shooting people. What it means is an immediate action disruption to get the heart pumping, to get our heroes moving, to get them questioning what's going on. And also it gives us as storytellers, like, maybe we really didn't mean for them to go down into the Undercity. Maybe we really did want them to follow the circling birds, and they just got caught up with this blue scarf thing. And you're like, so Chandler's gun could be environmental: floods, rains, storms, hurricanes. The city is on fire. The woods are on fire. It could be it could be a old building begins to collapse. It could be people marching in the streets. It has to be some immediate action disruption to get the blood pumping again, maybe get some die rolls, get the players trying to question things, and to get the players to start questioning their world. Who, what, where, when, why, how, and along with moving, running, using their resources and such. And then we can kickstart our own creativity by kickstarting our players' creativity to make this hive mind start up again. Sorry. A bardic lich would be Iron Maiden Eddie. yeah, absolutely. With an out of time, one of those classic brushed steel microphones and whatnot in their hand, casting all kinds of like verbal spells, audio spells. That'd be awesome, just from their voice. The Yanking says, in one of the games, Doom sought to steal the power of Odin. How funny it would be if he ran Asgard better than Odin ever did. Like, he gave Loki the respect he always craved. You know what? In a what if, that would be hilarious if you could get like Dr. Doom, Odin or Loki, who else? The Kingpin, like some of our notorious big bads, but they all switch places and run their regimes better than the other one. Like, could you imagine? I don't know. It wouldn't make any sense, but like if Loki ran the Kingpin's criminal organization better than he ever could. I like the idea of Dr. Doom sitting on the throne of Asgard, though, because he kind of, if he hasn't done it already, and I don't know if he has, it kind of sounds like the thing he would do. I mean, hell, we've seen Dr. Doom riding on Silver Surfer's surfboard with the power cosmic. So yeah, Gaster says, maybe you meet someone you first knew in the village and you choose a song to play whenever they appear. Now, place it further into the future, walking through a battlefield covered in the bodies of dead soldiers, but you discover one familiar face in the wreckage and you hear that song. I love stuff like that. I love like callbacks. Um, Foreshadows. Sorry. Wow. Foreshadows and callbacks are a huge thing to play with. If you guys run your games with music, it's a good idea that if that song is memorable, to bring that song back again. Maybe if someone at your table writes poetry or song lyrics, that sounds awesome as well. Maybe there's a turn of phrase, the Queen's hand, that someone mentions, and then it's mentioned again in similar circumstance. Um, Basically, starting to attach significance to a thing that maybe didn't have significance in the first place. I mean, it would be interesting to, see a battlefield filled with dead people, and a family walks along and they're draping these blue scarves over certain soldiers, and they're like, well, A, why are they doing it? And B, why over specific soldiers? And maybe later on the PCs are like confounded by very intelligent undead spirits like wraiths or wights or ghosts or something, specters, banshees, and they're all wearing blue scarves. And they're like, ooh, what's this have to do with, what does one have to do with another? So in other words, what I'm trying to get at is that, first of all, we're not perfect. Get that out your head right now. You will never make perfection, and don't allow perfect to get in the way of very good. Second of all, take advantage of the hive mind. Yourself, your players, use that information. The best idea is the idea that's best for everybody, not just yours. So if someone attaches meaning or background or history to something and you hadn't thought of it, erase yours and make that the new thing, the good thing. Also, when in doubt, throw a monkey wrench into it. Throw chaos into your plan, and then allow the questions to come up: who, what, where, when, how, why, where came from, what is the purpose, how did they do this thing, and let the organic allow organic creativity to come out on the table to create answers for the chaos. And that everything doesn't need to be meaningless. It can have great meaning. We just don't know what that meaning is yet. Again, this is a first drafter. Sorry. Gasser says, while it's great to use a visual cue in the story, I think auditory clues are also a brilliant way to bring in reoccurring characters or situations into a story. While colors, random objects, and even reappearing characters can act as a visual cue to get the player's attention, music is a perfect way to make the players feel a certain thing. Well, we you know what? Great composers for our excellent television and movies will do that. Many times they will write a theme song for a particular character or a theme song for a particular event. We know this because John Williams is an award-winning composer who, the minute you hear the Imperial March, you know something's about to happen, whether you see them or not, right? So yeah, absolutely. I absolutely believe that. Hey, Mike says, the Queen's hand, a lady in waiting who serves as bodyguard and assassin. Hells yes. Hells yes. And that might be just a turn of phrase that people do. That, the player characters mention someone, and an NPC turns away and says, oh, you'll bring about the Queen's hand. I don't want to talk to you any longer. And they're like, the Queen's hand? What does that mean? And like just now, right? Within easily less than an hour, we now have a big bad, the Queen's hand, inserted into a story, which could have just been, which was literally something I pulled out of my ass, right? All of these things. And who's to say that because of the bloodline of the Lycans, all of this has come about through, and see how I brought it back again, right? That there's something sitting in the background, and these things may be like maybe these blue scarves keep the lichens from transforming under the full moon or whatever, and they cover their heads and they wear it around their necks or something, or maybe it's a way to not be a victim of them. Yeah, exactly, Drew. Yeah. Drew says, I liked Superior Spider-Man, which was actually Doc Ock in Peter's body. I remember that storyline, who was more successful at being the hero than Peter ever was. Yep. Yep. Mm-mm-mm. I remember the Superior Spider-Man storyline. Very difficult to pull off in a modern context, but awesome story writing, I think. Yep, was a better Spider-Man than Spider-Man ever was. Like, plan? Do I look like a guy with a plan? Yeah. Yeah. No need to have plans. As a matter of fact, many powered by the Apocalypse games and forged in the Dark games are based on this very idea. The Chekhov's gun, the Iceberg, the Chandler's law, where it's you have a framework, and as we play, we're establishing significance to a thing that doesn't have any significance at all. And it's really weird. It feels like it's seat of the pants, right? It feels like we should be prepared. And that's where our over prepping when it comes to tabletop role-playing games becomes a little bit of our drawback, because we want to over prep to prepare for these questions, but sometimes we don't really need to, you know? I mean, yes, does it break a little immersion to tell the players, why do you think they wear blue scarves, right? If literally stating that, but I've been asked that question at the table many times. Now, some people feel like they don't like that because it makes the game master come across as if they don't know what the game is about. But I would dare say that what they're trying to do is make the game more about you than about themselves. So it's about the players. The entire game should be in front of the player characters. All the extraneous stuff doesn't matter if it's not in front of the player characters. So if they decide that the blue scarf and the queen's hand and the lichens and all that stuff has some more meaning that you ever wrote down, just save what you wrote, leave it for something else. Maybe it'll come up later. Instead, just go with the players do, and see where that goes. And they don't need to be correct. There is no absolute correctness, right? They could assume that it means one thing, and then you just twist it a little bit. You twist it just enough, right? Maybe they think the blue scarf has to do with the dragon lords, but really it actually has to do with the lich lord, or the queen's assassin, or something, like, you know what I mean? You can twist it just a little bit just to make it fit into, like, you know, where you're not literally running a game where the players know all the answers by them guessing. It could just be, excuse me, it could just be a matter of taking their ideas, mixing and matching it, and then putting it in a blender and coming back later. Mike says the bad guy will be both the guy who sets up the heroes for imprisonment and the one who frees them. The first he did in secret, the second openly. He may also have killed ones who imprisoned the PCs to cover his trail. I like this storylines. Yeah, we got to talk about some bad guys and stuff later on too. Never strive to be perfect, but never strive to be close enough. There's a fine line between the two ideas, and while it's hard to walk, it's not impossible. Yeah, I know. I mean, what is it? Artists are never done. They're just given schedules, right? Yeah, a true artist is never done. They're just like, they're given it. Hey, it's got to be done by the 20th, and the 20th just happens to be your cutoff line. Other than that, you'd be working on it forever. Yep, the king had plans. The town guard had plans. They're schemers trying to control their little worlds. Ledger of the Heath. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Gaster. We're going to take it out on this one. Just also to add to what DB said, I never, ever feel upset to receive criticism from your players. Yeah. Yep. A campaign is never going to start clean, nor will it start 100% crystal clear. Never. Yep. And there will always just be some ideas that seem pretty cool at first in your head, but Is it really, really stupid in play? Yeah. But excuse me, is really, really stupid in play. I've done that plenty of times. Hell, I've written down NPC names that I've said out loud and like regretted it ever since. Yeah, being a good DM isn't just about great writing, or complex systems or fun dialogue. It's sometimes just about listening to your players who have some opinions on where you could improve. And sometimes that improvement isn't even focused at you. It could just be you get to the table and you go, yeah, this mystery is stupid. I'm going with what the players are thinking of. The End King says, yeah, all this is compounded by certain systems, like Powered by the Apocalypse. Some of these games, characters get specific moves like reveal a plot twist. They can say that at a random character, that a random character is their brother, etc. And we're gonna let's keep talking about this later on, because Powered by the Apocalypse is designed for that kind of chaos to happen. And I've played with people. One of my best friends, I just call him M, would always do that with random NPCs and things like that. He would say things like, "Oh, that person is a long lost relative. I haven't seen them in a while." And I'm like, when did this happen? And then just embracing that chaos. A lot of times you end up realizing that chaos is actually much better when a person does that. It's actually much better than we think it is. Not to be scared of it. So, anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you very much for coming back, and thank you very much for allowing me to take a little bit of break. I went to the Caribbean. I was all over. I went to Atlanta and Key West and Cozumel, Mexico, and things like that. So yeah, I kind of did a little trip, little Southern Caribbean trip, and had some great experiences. Wife had a birthday, and we did a New Year's cruise. So we had New Year's on the deck of a cruise ship. Kind of cool. So yep. Gasser says, one final bit of advice for any new DMs: don't try and outdo yourself in the storyline. Yeah, you'll fail every time. It either becomes too pedantic, overly complicated, or you just forget whatever the hell you were going to do in the first place. I've done that plenty of times where I'm like, ooh, this real cool twist, and you just go like, nope. I'm surprised that comment showed up 3 lines. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, future episode, Day of Family. That's actually not a bad idea. Thank you. Yeah, you traveled the world to perfect your GM skills. Dig it. Yep. Day of a Peasant Rebellion. That's actually kind of cool too. Yep. Yeah, Shice is like, I hope my brain works tomorrow. Me too. Me too. Anyway, guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. I'm not going to hold you any longer. Thank you very much for spending your time here. Your time is very valuable. I hope I and myself, with all of our co-hosts and their brilliance, are able to make change in your tabletop role-playing experience. Thank you very much. Have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility.